So everybody welcome Jayme Smithers. He's the CRO over at ThoughtExchange. Round of applause, cheers, the crowd goes wild.
Where's the clap music?
We'll add that in to the recording, just like a stadium cheers and applause. Thanks so much for joining us, Jayme. I'm really excited. The thing that made me want to do this live and invite others was the fact that you're running an online sales team, or like a distributed or remote team, or whatever word you use to describe the team. Mm-hmm. I think the initial reason we started having this conversation, aside from, it seems like since we've announced that we're doing this webinar together, all these people have come out of the woodwork, both close contacts of yours and mine, saying, two people that they know working together. They're pretty excited.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I think it was Rob Atwell and Colby Fackler. Both.
Oh yeah, Colby. Yeah, nice. Yeah, I saw his boat. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it was my cousin's husband. Really? I know Colby super well. Yeah. Right on.
I was an early Whitecaps season ticket holder way back when they were in Swangard.
Okay. Back in the day, I remember going to a couple games back when they were there because Colby got us out. So to the point of the webinar, I was super excited because you started selling for Xerox because your dad owned an agency.
Yeah.
And then you moved into ski racing, which is, and you used the Xerox, skills to pay for that career, which is a really interesting start to a career. But then you joined a Vancouver legend, a company here in Vancouver that's legendary for, it's the sort of Crystal Decisions Mafia is kind of the closest we have to the PayPal Mafia here in Vancouver. And so you spent some time at Crystal. They went through Crystal, Business Objects, and now SAP. And then you got a chance to bounce to NetSuite. And then you were there through the acquisition by Oracle. And so you've got sort of two acquisitions under your belt. Now you're at ThoughtExchange as the CRO, and you're running a distributed team. I'm curious, I'd like to start there. I originally said, hey, let's start with some other pieces, but I think just given the current circumstances and everybody's either working from home or
Sure.
running and managing a remote team, I'd love to start the conversation there. And so talk to me about where you're working today, because you got a moose behind you. This is quite possibly the most Canadian background I've seen. I love it. This is amazing.
Oh, geez, yes. What a setup. How do I follow that up? Well, Colin, it's been a treat to get to know you through this process. Yes, I am Jayme Smithers. I do have a moose behind me. I have worked with pretty iconic brands. I've been very privileged and fortunate to work for companies like Xerox, SAP, Oracle, and then those acquisitions all tucked into those. That's just about 20 years, and ski career in between, University of Denver finance degree. And now I work for a fantastic company that is making a difference in the world like never before in this moment. And it's a company called ThoughtExchange, and we are a crowdsourcing platform, which many of you are like, what? Maybe crowdsourcing is really second nature to you. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. In our personal lives, crowdsourcing is very second nature to us. Whether it was an analog version of crowdsourcing, which is like, hey, where's a good restaurant to go? And you talk to a bunch of different people, to more crowdsourcing app-like technologies. Like now the modern version of that is Yelp, and or like, hey, what's the best way to get from point A to point B? If I'm in this beautiful town called Rosslyn, which is just above Spokane. I see where Rob is. What's the fastest route to get to Spokane? I would use probably Waze to crowdsource and find the best, safest route, most effective way. Well, that's essentially what we're doing now with a crowdsourcing platform, with kind of the first crowdsourcing platform and leading crowdsourcing platform with ThoughtExchange, which is how are you hearing from everybody in the organization and learning what matters most, empowering your leadership team to learn what matters most, so then they can help chart the course and what that may be. So in sales and predictable revenue around this, we're working with companies like Lever and Looker and Oracle and great brands that are crowdsourcing with their SDRs, AEs, account executives, account managers to ultimately put the best possible training and enablement in front of them, adapt, learn their concerns and fears. And in the same process, because the way the platform works from a share your thoughts, without bias, star the thoughts, rate them at what is highest without seeing who's associated with that thoughts. And then you're discovering everyone is learning through that process as well. So it's a powerful, both participant experience as well as a leadership experience. So super powerful, fun company. We're a little bit about ThoughtExchange. We're 150 employees now. We have, I think, 146 offices. So as Colin mentions, we're pretty distributed. And I can get into a little bit of reasons why and how we've been able to successfully manage that and effectively lead through that in a really meaningful way. And we just raised Series B. Just this past year, we brought on 3 really awesome venture capital firms. One in Toronto called Information Venture Partners, one in Seattle called Voyager Capital, and then one in Vancouver called Yaletown Partners. So 3 really great partners and added now to our board, and we feel really excited about the difference we're making now, specifically around remote work. It really ties into this platform of how do you build trust at scale, and how do you shift from what was an analog way of crowdsourcing to a virtual way or digital way of crowdsourcing and helping organizations and leaders. So.
Yeah, it was a really interesting time for us to connect. One, both because, normally we don't talk too much about the product, but I thought it's super relevant kind of to start there. Mm-hmm. We've as Predictable Revenue, we've never been fully remote of a company. We've always been sort of remote friendly. And that started with, I have 3 co-founders, and we've never, ever lived in the same city. Actually, that's not true. 2 of us lived in the same city for about a year, maybe 2 years. And then, but even still, the co-founder who was here in the city still worked remotely, didn't come in the office very frequently, even though he was like a couple blocks down the road. And so we started with a remote friendly, as a remote friendly company. I refused to buy a printer. Our accounting team, because I thought paper would be the thing that like weighed us down. For whatever reason, I thought it would be too easy, too much of a crutch. But I felt really fortunate that we were like remote, I guess, capable. Everybody had laptops, everything exists in Google Drive. And so I felt lucky that we were like at least a portable workforce. And now as we're looking to make the transition and the journey to, potentially going full time, fully remote, I thought, geez, I want to pick your brain about how you do that. Cause I've had a number of guests on here, and Liam Martin from TimeDoctorStaff.com and Running Remote is one of the people. And he talked about his struggles hiring and ramping salespeople. And so I'd love to understand your experience there. Because specifically with salespeople, I think there's a whole lot that you get that's like knowledge transfer from just sitting and listening. I think, and like rightly or wrongly, a whole lot of like improvements to how our salespeople sold in the early days was because I happened to be, a couple desks over, and I heard somebody on the phone saying something. And I'm like, oh, you know what? Hey, I try it this way, or why don't you try it this way next time? And because you're sitting there, you get this pulse check of, I can just sit and listen, and I can hear how my pipeline sounds. And I know that's such an old school way of thinking about it, but that was my opinion back then.
Yeah. And I think it's like, your friends, our mutual friends in Modern Sales Pros, I did a presentation with them yesterday as well. And I'm now 20 years in the game, and I'm always trying to think, like, one of the topics we'll talk about later, I think, is around this, how do I continue to reinvent myself and stay open to learning? And that was one of the things, which is like, how have you been able to do that? And I was benefactor of building an office. When I was with Crystal, they said, hey, listen, you're this inside sales account executive. Now we'd like you to go into leadership. So can you go to Toronto and start an office there for us? I was like, I'm 26 years old. I'm moving into a brand new city from Denver. And I did. And 3 years later, the EVP came to, I was like, I want to move to Vancouver. Like, Toronto's great, but I want to move to Vancouver. And they're like, thank you. You just built an amazing office here. You hired hundreds of people. The culture was that, like, it was pods of people physically, benefit. I was high-fiving people every morning and like checking in and doing that type of thing and seeing the osmosis of somebody sitting directly beside somebody. And then I got hired by NetSuite. And NetSuite was like, oh, we're just looking for talent. We don't care where you are. So it's kind of my first opening from like traditional, like even in SAP. I then went to Vancouver, and we had 150 inside sales executives, all physically in the Vancouver office, and it was thriving and it was crushing it, and it was really good. And then I was like, okay, how am I going to go take on the next job? And I took on with NetSuite, and they were like, we don't care where you are. I was like, oh, really?
Huh? What?
What did you say? They were like, we don't have anybody in Vancouver. Your team will be Denver, Toronto, wherever you build the offices or wherever you hire them. I was like, oh, this is the thing. So this was like 2014. NetSuite was on this game earlier on, which was like, opened my eyes first. And so I was like, hey, I'm going to move to Fernie. And I was in Vancouver at the time, and they were like, Fernie, is that in Alaska? Or I was like, no, don't worry about it. Like, are you okay? I'm going to move to Fernie. And that's like, this is a dream. Like, we're living in the Kootenays, raising our family, 10 minutes from a ski resort is the ultimate dream. And I think it's real. Like, it's real. Like, our technology today is so good, and companies' culture have changed culturally, and now they're going to be massively changing culture. This is a watershed moment for people to live and how they work and live in the area that they actually ultimately want to. And so that was the first exposure to leading remote. And then even in coming to this now super high growth. So in 2.5 years, we went from just around 70 employees. I'm now middle of the pack. So I'm like, I think I was employee 70, now we're 150.
Wow.
In 2.5 years, mostly sales and marketing staff that we've brought in, and customer success. We've doubled our revenue every year during this time. And we've hired not one, like I invested in WeWork. That was probably my more traditional way of like, okay, well, we should have some place for people in Vancouver to come, like, to get together. I hired a bunch of people in Toronto, person in Edmonton, Chilliwack, Victoria, Cumberland, Penticton. they're all over the place.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. Like, they're like, actually the top 2 employees that we hired, one was in Chilliwack and one was in Edmonton. Neither of them were in an office, not once. And the interesting thing that I would like, the advice I'd give now with why and how do you actually make that work? One is our company was remote from the foundation of it. Mm-hmm. Like, even our 2 co-founders here in Rossland have a couple office. Both of them work from their home even still today. Like, when I came, I was like, okay, I'm going to move to Rossland. All right, headquarters. All right, where? No one's in the office. Everyone's like all over the place. Like,
yeah.
Anyways, and so we've always from day one had Zoom. Always camera on Zoom. We've leveraged Slack as our technology, and I think so. We've always embraced technology and being really present in these types of meetings, and we've always just, like, for however many years we've been running, leading in with technology, so it's second nature to us. Second is we have embraced this agreement culture so that we get agreement from key staff and stakeholders when we're hiring somebody. So, for example, our HR, our lead, will identify for culture and alignment in culture. Then it goes into me from skills, and then it goes to the team. So if we're hiring an SDR, the SDR will meet other SDRs. The SDR will meet other account executives. The SDR will meet other account managers and meet other client success managers. So there's this like group hiring. We capture all of that in Lever. Mm-hmm. So our technology with Lever, which is awesome, great partner to be actually see like, yeah, this person's a 4, 3, 2, or I agree, I'm not in agreement. And this beautiful, and I had no idea that this was like how this would work. And now it's only like reflecting back, like why are some of the reasons we've been able to be successful? And I remember my old school thinking again, which is like, we have to be physical in the meeting, like physically present. And we then have to have a one-to-one mentorship. And I remember asking the team, I was like, hey, we're about to hire about a whole bunch of people. Should we like do one-on-one mentorship? And they're like, no, we're good. We've interviewed them. These are the right people. We've got them. We're going to support them. I was like, whoa. All in. Everyone was in agreement. If they're not in agreement, we don't hire the person. So the company was in agreement with the hire, and therefore it was this beautiful thing. And I went through it myself. I probably interviewed with 25 different people over Zoom. My day one, people were like, how can I help? I'm here to help you. Whatever you need, I'm here to help you. This is a beautiful moment of people helping that that new member come in and be really successful. From there, we're Google Shop as well. Our calendars are all open. Everyone sees everyone's calendar. So it's like, hey, I'm going to jump. You have a meeting there with the customer. Do you mind if I jump in on it with you? Yeah, no problem. Come on in. All open, all transparent. Every email, we BCC our corp sales team or education sales team. Everybody sees every email that goes out from the company. So we drop nothing. And then you can see and you learn. You'll learn through that process. So you're seeing people's communication with their customers, with their prospects. You're jumping on calls. You're seeing those types of things. And so everything's always been really open in our organization, and it makes it really easy. When Gong came around, I was like, oh, that's a beautiful thing. Let's record all of our, that's, of course, another no-brainer. We're already transparent, super open. It's great. So here's a great sales call. Here, share it out. And so those are all like, I think both a balance of like culturally how we're set up, and then how we embrace technology, and then how we invested in enablement. We're big skiers here in our, as you can well imagine. So of course our playbook for sales, for account executives, SDRs, AEs, and client success managers is now this path to double black.
Nice.
If you get to double black, you're a master on the slopes. So we have built the foundational pillars of green, blue, black, double black. And we're not expecting everybody to be double black. It's just as good to have somebody, a blue skier and a green skier and a black diamond skier. But we have a program for people to then follow through that process. And so those are all of the things. Every meeting is open. You can jump in. And then I think the last thing, it's probably the shameless plug with our platform, is everyone has a voice in our company. So no one really gets left behind. The introverts, the extroverts, the way that our platform works, we asking big open-ended questions, and everyone gets to participate at any particular time to share. And that's always part of both the agenda setting of meetings to how we come together in fireside chats or town halls, et cetera. So again, just this like constant openness, leveraging both kind of our culture and then utilizing and marrying up technology. So makes sense?
Even if they're a snowboarder, not a skier?
Yeah, we do not discriminate. Snowboarders are just as cool. They probably would say they're cooler.
I think it depends on the conditions, you know? Those
we got surfers, we got bikers, we got runners, we got walkers, we got dogs.
Right on. I've heard that, you know, when people talk about remote, is that it forces you have to be an intentional company. You can't leave anything to accident. You can't leave anything to circumstance, or, you know, you're going to pass, you know, Jayme in the hallway, and so you're going to ask him something. Everything has to be more intentional. There has to be a lot more documentation up front. You have to get your company processes, the core processes, the core ideas. They all have to be documented and shared, because there's no water cooler, you know, there's no, you know, keg that we all stand around on a Friday and chat. There's no visual, like you can't see people acting. So you have to be intentional about, okay, this is the culture we want to create, and this is the culture we want to enforce. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you've like managed to I guess create a culture online? Because that to me is like something that I feel like we had the strong germ of a culture already, and we've taken that online, and I feel like that's serving us really well. I'm curious, how do you start that online?
Yeah, that's a great comment, which is, I don't know, the best story I can probably tell right now is one of our partners, Clio. So the CEO of Clio, one of the fastest, it's a unicorn. They just raised $250 million this past year in 2019. The CEO had that superpower essentially taken away over COVID. So he said, he has offices in Calgary, he has offices all over the world. They're a software as a service company for legal services. Mm-hmm. And about mid-March, he sent everybody mandatory work from home. And he's at home, similar to how we all are today. And what does he hear? Here's his wife, here's his 3 kids, and his dog.
Yeah.
This is the only signals he's hearing right now. He's like, Jayme, I'm not hearing the water cooler. Like, I'm missing that. I don't have my various leaders giving me insight so that I can be an effective leader. So when you all, like, we were approaching him before, we had actually worked with him. We'd done some stuff with him around live events and how to maximize his live events with us as well. But he said when that superpower was taken away from me as a leader, I didn't have the signals. So I can run a Zoom meeting, with 500 of my employees, but I can't hear them all. How am I, you can see in chat, there's a couple people, again, it's almost like Facebook. It's going to be the loudest, maybe most extroverted people that are going to make comments or high fives or raise their hand. And with your platform, I was in minutes able to crowdsource the concerns and fears of my whole organization in one moment. What concerns or fears do you have right now about COVID? 500 plus people participating and sharing his thoughts. And he's like, I was able to lean in and go, oh yeah, I figured that would be something that would rate high. And then all of a sudden I was learning new things that I normally would have maybe learned in a water cooler conversation physically there. And so it's super powerful for me. Now I'm back armed with the key insights so I can lead. Then I can empower my leadership team to actually go further, get knowledge to the edges, and potentially even chart new courses if we need to. So I don't know. I think that is it's a great example to that. Again, you have to be super intentional and you have to leverage ways to allow people to speak in remote, or it will even be worse and more isolating. So it's like, yeah, physically I can in an office and be like, oh, there's Colin, there's Trish, there's Matt, there's Dave. Hey, how you doing? Good day, good day, good day, good day. And I always made a point to do that. When I was in an office in Vancouver or in Toronto, no matter what team they were, I always said hello to everybody I was walking by. Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning, 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 type of thing. Maybe that was annoying for them all, or maybe they appreciated it. But how are you doing that then remote?
Yeah.
Our organization is the leadership team is doing stand-ups. I just heard our SDRs this morning. They're doing SDR morning, dress up. It's a tough job, SDR job, to do outreach. How are we doing outreach right now? How we show up right now during this crisis will be how we end up showing up greater. We're getting a bunch of deals coming in for sure, but we're not pushing it. We're being very respectful and trying to embrace what other people are thinking and have a tremendous amount of empathy on the situation. And their job is probably the hardest, to be like, okay, well, my job is to get a meeting, and it's kind of hard to get a meeting right now.
Yeah.
So anyways, there's ways that I think just making sure that you give people a voice. And that should be, how are your organizations thinking about giving your voice? Whether it goes back to 100% the way that it was, probably not. I think this is that watershed moment where it's like, oh, working from home is pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that. Like I said, we flirted with it a bunch of times. I've got 2-3 friends that have companies that have 100+ people, and they all sing the praises. And one of them started off as a digital nomad, and they've never had an office, and he's from Victoria, but he's never lived in Vancouver or Victoria since I've known him for longer than a couple of months. And it's usually just to come see family, do some things, go to the doctor, and then he's back off to Egypt or Tunisia or wherever. And so I'm somebody who's been exposed to it, but myself, we haven't, this has been an amazing experiment to sort of force my hand a little bit of, with this idea that it was important, but never urgent enough to actually give it a go, because giving up all those in-person meetings was really challenging. But like you said, this is forced our hand. And I think it's a really interesting experiment. And honestly, after my first week, I was like, I couldn't believe how much work I got done. People think, I think one of the worries, when I was sitting in an office and thinking, oh, remote workforce, I can't see the employees. Biggest concern was like, well, how do I know if they're doing anything?
Yeah, right.
And then my friend pointed out, he's like, well, if you're in the office, if you're people in the office, how do you know they're doing something? And it's like, I guess you can see if they're dicking around on Facebook, but people are going to send messages and they're going to do that, here and there, but it was a great point. And I've been thinking back and trying to compare my days, my weeks. Week one, I probably doubled the productivity of myself in the office. Just fewer distractions. I was more capable of doing the deep work that was really distracting when I was surrounded by, salespeople or, people coming by and asking questions. And so after week one, I threw my hands up in the air. I was like, yes, we're gonna, charge forward with this. But there's so much that we need to consider before just sort of jumping in, and we've all been forced into it. And I think to come back to like my concern is like, or not concern, but just the thing that I'm like, this problem I haven't solved is, we hire SDRs and we typically, like our business model is hiring SDRs in Cancun, training them, and then selling them to our customers or renting them to our customers. I like to make jokes that we sell, Mexicans, which is not the right way of saying it. But it's, we're trying to create these jobs, and we've done it by, we invested in an office there. We flew somebody from Colorado, I think from Denver, into Cancun and had her there to set up the base so she could be on site and teaching and training people. But now, like, that model is not out the window, but it's changed dramatically. And so I'm curious on you've doubled the size of your team, and largely that's been sales marketing. I'd love your advice on like, how are you hiring and onboarding your salespeople? Because that's one thing that I've talked to a couple remote people that have distributed sales forces, and they say, I always, even when I hire salespeople, I always fly them to location X, spend the first couple weeks, first month with them, just to help accelerate things. So I'd love to understand, what does your process look like for hiring, specifically when you're hiring and onboarding new salespeople?
Yeah, it's great. We do the exact opposite, which is like, I don't know, and it works. Like, our SDRs are, I would put them up against any SDR in the business. They're ridiculous and amazing, and the how they work together, and they're not in one office, and you can just see how they work. And I think, again, I point back to like defining, what skills you're looking for in your organization, defining the cultural kind of like skills you're also looking for. And so if you marry those two things up first, which is like, okay, here's the cultural that we really embrace. This is our culture. Do, ask, learn. We're looking for people that, our SDRs can be a woman that was out of work raising 3 kids and comes back was in a different, industry, and comes back and is just an amazing self-starter, and it's like, hey, put me in, coach. Like, I'm ready to go. We've had multiple people. So it's like, we defined what we're looking ultimately for. It's not the exact, like, actually having really open, flexible, but there's like those skills that we're like, what are the transferable skills? Because we know the SDR is then going to go from an SDR to an account executive or account manager, or even somewhere else in the organization, maybe to our events team. We've seen all of those things. But defining the characteristics of what you're looking for is really critical. Having, again, back to that, I point to that agreement piece, having your staff part of the onboarding makes, like, part of the hiring and then part of the onboarding makes it really critical. They ultimately will help with a lot. And then our onboarding is we had kind of 2 part-time employees, both giving about 50% of their time. We built out what the overall playbook looks like for onboarding, and they work with them through Zoom to work through that overall onboarding. So here's our deliverables for week 1. Here's our deliverables for week 2. Here's our deliverables for week 3. Here's our deliverables for week 4. And you can kind of accelerate through that as fast as you actually want. And then we announce, it's like, hey, we're at green. Well, we already just passed blue, and you can see in Slack channel, then the enablement leader coach is like, hey, just, congratulations on Colin, he just passed this. So there's like that type of thing that's happening. And then they're not like quarantined, if you will. They are also like, so they have a special coach that's helping them enable the key things that we said by their role. And they're right in with the team in their overall team meetings. They're going into regular customer calls, et cetera, and so forth. And so that's been really critical. And all of that stuff is been remote. Every one of those sessions is absolutely remote and is over Zoom. And, we really commit to to Zoom and making, I think it's not easy for everybody to work remote. Like, I think that's why I think critical is actually in the hiring process, is figuring out people who are able to work remote and not come into an office. Like, having seen that at Crystal Business Objects SAP, I was like, okay, like I had a couple of people who went from like inside sales to field sales. And then, so they were deployed to their home office, and then they were commuting, they were doing the work from their office, and they struggled. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of recognizing the skills also, and the self-starterness of being able to be focused and being as productive as you are at home from when you were in an office, if you will.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Was just like, are there specific parts of your interview process where you're trying to pick apart whether or not somebody, like, I guess, how do you understand ahead of time? How do you know ahead of time if somebody's going to be a great, capable of working remotely?
Yeah, I would look. So I've leveraged this process from a kind of a friend and mentor, which is the organization's called Sales Talent Agency. They do a lot of placement of great talent. I think we probably have mutual connections there.
We just had Jayme we did a podcast with him a couple of weeks ago.
So this is a shout out to Jayme, because he's helped me hire tons of really amazing talent. And he's been my North Star of like, what are some of the things I should drive into? So I use it's his language, his words, DNA Pro. So it's drive, nature, acumen, performance, relevance, and opportunities. So those are the 5 things. So drive, nature, acumen, and then you can start to dig into that. So I'm asking questions about what their drive, what they've been able to achieve, what's their this is what I did, this is what I started. Their nature is just how they how are they coming across in the conversation, if you will. And their acumen is usually what questions are they asking me through that process. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of like tuning into their smarts, if you will, around their acumen. And then you get into pro, so performance. So what have they excelled at? What did they do? It doesn't have to be, I think, again, go back to old me, newer me, still open to learning me. I would have been like, you have to have 2 years business to business experience when I was at Business Objects and hiring all these people in Toronto. And it had to be software first. And if it wasn't software, then it was hardware. And if it wasn't hardware, then I'm like, okay, I don't know, maybe we'll probably won't hire you. Now I don't I just throw that out the window. It's like, actually, performance, I don't know, were you like an amazing pianist? Like, are you like, you're a jazz musician, or you achieved something amazing in art, science, whatever? Like, what did you strive to achieve? Where did you have performance in your life, and why? And how sustained was that performance? That's what I'm looking for in performance. Relevance, again, that's a kind of like, it's an you could take it from do you have specific job relevance? Like, you've sold into education, or you've sold to HR leaders, you've sold to sales, or you have software experience. But a lot of it is like, I'm looking at it from more the skills. Like, how are your communication skills? How are your leadership? We hired one of our top employees is a pastor, and a personal trainer. And I was like, okay, well, these are he's been in small communities across the world and brought people together in a really meaningful way. He's been able to have really meaningful leadership conversations and challenging conversations, conflict-based conversations that are like, hey, Colin, you're better than that. I think this is what you should actually do. It's like, oh, that's a challenger sale moment for me. That's beautiful. But if you can't get past how does pastor equal relevance or how does HR leader, or how does chief of staff for a municipal politician? These are employees that we have. Yeah. How does that so you got to open up your thinking around that relevance piece. And then opportunities is the classic, I don't know the right answer there, but it definitely is like, how many different jobs have they had over the last 5 or 6 years? And is there a good story that supports it? I think the natural is if they've had so many different jobs, you're I don't know, my old me is like, oh, that's a big red flag. I don't know. The new world is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Of what employees and I think people are changing pretty quickly in jobs, if you will. But maybe they're just not also seeing that company. I think more and more companies want to make more and more employees want to make a difference with their employer, and really be purpose. So that's one of the things that we really see as well in hiring people is like, what's their drive around making a difference in the world and the planet, because that's kind of what we're ultimately selling here as well. So
very cool. And so it seems like you've gotten rid of the candidate profile and you're really going after these specific attributes.
I would say so. Yep. Yeah, we're like, and I think on anything too, which is, I don't know if it's fair or not fair, but I think your employees know best. Like in all of those scenarios of all the high growth companies I've been with. So we've scaled Crystal, Business Objects, SAP, we scaled NetSuite and Oracle, and now we're scaling ThoughtExchange. The number one consistent thing, Jaymes are great and sales talent agencies are great, is like your employees know what's the work. They know the coal face, they know what's happening and the type of people that are going to excel here, and they have friends and connections into it, and we're like, hey, this person's in this particular role, and we interview them, and that helps. And I don't know if that's a risk element or not, but it definitely has helped us land really amazing talent. Is the talent that we currently have has been a great advocate for us. Like our Glassdoor is 5 out of 5 in our organization, and people look at that as well. So we get random people coming in to be like, oh, I've heard about you, I've tried your platform, I've seen you, and we're really open to them, and if they have got some random background. But generally a lot of the talent is coming also from our existing staff.
That's fair. I found employee internal referrals, just like customer referrals, lead to the best customers. Employee referrals lead to the best hires. But you need to get that initial seed right. I 100% agree with you there. It's funny because you're ThoughtExchange is a company that I've heard referred to as like a Vancouver startup. You hear from all the people, that I know a couple of the advisors. I don't know the founding team at all, but I know a couple of advisors that I don't know if they invested or if they were just early into it.
Early angels. And most of it's been angels up to just over the last year.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it was like I know a couple of the early angels, and and they talk about do you know anybody over there? And then I look and I've looked at your LinkedIn before, and I'm like, there's nobody in Vancouver. I
think my LinkedIn still says Vancouver.
Yeah. And then I'm like, I'm having to Google, like, I'm in Vancouver. You're not that far from me. I'm like, where the hell is Rossland? And then you're like, yeah, I'm skiing. I'm 10 minutes from the ski hill. And then I'm reconsidering the fact that I live in Vancouver in the city, especially right now. I think there's sort of like there's kind of two parts to the problem of running or hiring remote salespeople, which is like, one is I think is hiring. And for sure, I think you've got it nailed, that like hiring the right people, being intentional about your hiring process and making sure you're screening for people that can actually run remote is absolutely a critical first step. For people that didn't have that luxury of, you've got this team that's in flight right now. I'm curious, how do you continue, like, how does coaching work for a salesperson, at ThoughtExchange? Because if I'm, like I was talking about earlier, and I've gotten better at this, and so I have opinions, but in the early days, so much of the coaching that I delivered came from happenstance. I happened to overhear somebody on this call. Sure. I'd maybe jump in, or so what does coaching and like that ongoing mentorship look like, so that people are slowly getting better?
Yeah, that's wonderful. So that's great. It's my big rock. So my big rocks, we've talked a little bit about this as the way that I think you should think about each of your roles. If you were to focus in on 3 major things, what would those three things be? If you're an inside sales executive or a sales development rep, if you're an account manager, if you did these 3 things really, really well, would you be then winning and being the best in that particular role? And so for me, I think about performance, people, and process. Those are I'm a CRO, and I'm thinking about those are my big rocks. So on performance is how are we towards budget? How are we in a particular month? What are some of the things we need to do to maximize sales, increase net retention, et cetera, but all around revenue and performance. On process is like, how are we putting systems and process in play to support? Every hour that is taken away from an SDR or account executive, account manager, client success manager is a massive concern for me. So it's how are we maximizing, removing admin, maximizing times that they're spent, customer focused, if you will. And then the top one is around people. So people around what are we putting in place to help support our people? How are we hiring the right people? How are we enabling them? How are we empowering them to be the absolute best versions of themselves? And so the big one for me this year is just that, which is coaching. I have we have scaled our company. We just hired a bunch of new people this past year because of our Series B. And so now I have a bunch of new leaders. My fundamental core thing that I'm focusing on with my leadership team is coaching. It's the key leadership skill. So in leadership, there's autocratic leading, there's dictatorial leading or directing, there's pace setting, there's coaching, there's democratic, there's delegating, there's all sorts of I think that's an IBM model of there's 6 or 7 different, key types of leadership. I would argue that you have to be able to be at least aware and potentially going into each of them. Maybe sometimes you just got to pace set and show your team what you actually do. Other times you're going to give them more and let them go out and try and fail fast and come back. But so you have to kind of go through all of them and know where you're stronger as a leader and be aware and where how you normally do it. With a newer staff, you're probably more pace setting, more directing, more coaching. Especially if you're in Covey model of hey, you're in D1 as you're just learning something. So the more that you as a leader can give them insight to help them be successful, the faster they're going to go to progress to the next, to get ultimately to unconscious competence, so that they're in that double black. So the big one for me is just coaching. We use Gong to help coach. Everything is open and transparent. Every email, if I see an email, I'm not reading every email, but I'll be okay, I'm going to spend some time just reading some of the emails that are being going out by SDRs, AEs. Oh, hey, Colin, I noticed this email, good. And I think you could actually tweak it a little bit here. Here's a message that you can take. So just everyone is always thinking about that. And then
Can you actually have everybody BCC?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's as I mentioned earlier, so it's if you're on corp sales, and I'm sending an email, I will BCC corp sales. Anybody who's associated with corp sales will see my email to that customer or prospect.
Huh. Interesting.
So it gets a lot of emails. The volume now is oh shoot, I can't keep up with our education team. We grew and scaled our education team. I was okay, they seem pretty good now. I'm going to stop looking at I have that now go to a folder, and I'll go take a look at, hey, how's our education emails out right now? And I'll take another look. Or for me, that's okay, where should I focus right now? I want to focus in on how are we expanding with our corporate clients, and how are we landing our corporate clients? I want to see every email that's going out around that. I want to look at every video conference call through Gong and start to actually see and consume some of that. How are they talking about our competition? So it's just, that's the type of insights that I'm pushing towards our leadership team. And then if you're going to jump on a call with me, I'm going to do pregame, during, then you have the game, and then you have postgame. So it's just part of the DNA of, all right, Colin, so we're going to talk with predictive revenue, the CEO of predictive revenue. Who is this person? What's their key objectives? How much do we know of their organization? Okay, what's our objective on this call? What would the CEO of predictive revenue want? What was their ultimate objective? Okay, great. And so that's great. We got the objective. So therefore, what's our agenda to achieve that objective? Okay, this is our agenda. Okay, that sounds good. What role would you like me to play in this particular call, Colin? I'd like you to play this particular. Okay, good. Pre-game, done, ready to go. We do the game. Post-game. Colin, what's the one thing that We did awesome on that call with the CEO of Predictive Revenue. What's the one thing that we could do better? And what's our key next step? So it's part, like I'm trying to both embody that. So I'm pace setting and leading that way. I'm helping coach my leadership team. They have obviously one-on-ones with their staff, et cetera. But like, this was a big lesson for me in NetSuite. We were just so customer focused at NetSuite. We barely had any. It was like, contrast this, juxtapose this. So SAP, amazing company. And we had so many internal meetings, internal forecast meetings. There's like so much effort, internal facing. I go to NetSuite, everything's customer centric. It was like, what a shift. We barely have any internal meetings. I was like, holy smokes, how are we getting like, and meanwhile at SAP, we're like, we're spending a bunch of time getting better, lots of internal work, coaching, and that. NetSuite, we're very focused with the customer. I was like, well, okay, we have to change then. How are we getting, if we're in the game always, how are we getting better? It's great. And let's like, so if we're in the game, meaning we're in with customers and prospects all the time, how are we improving our skills? I was like, pre-game, post-game, pre-game, post-game, pre-game, post-game. And we have this, so we've just incorporated that same type of approach here at ThoughtExchange, which is we have some internal meetings. We have some check-ins. We have some sell corporate pod meetings, et cetera, and education pod and account managers and client success, where they're sharing and they're setting the agenda. But the main thing is, I think it's just, my goal is to get everyone really in my leadership team coaching.
Gotcha. Because I guess if you're in that leadership role, that seems like it's one of your primary responsibilities. Is this is just how the math works. If I take you from being an individual contributor and I put you on top of these people, instead of the 10 units of sales that I was going to get from you, I'm expecting that you managing these 8 people is going to produce 20 units more in sales.
Yeah, and I think our leaders too. One of the things that our CEO does well is like, he'll just roll up his sleeves and help get a deal done. So we're also like part of that, if you take that IBM model, at any time we can go in and pace up. I can from start to finish do a deal and take it all the way through. I'm not wanting to do that. Like, I think it's key is getting to from the employee, but all of our leaders can roll up their sleeves and be like, okay, we got work to do. We got to hit this number. And their goal is to create empowered employees, realizing sometimes you got to just lead one for them, so that then they can follow. It's like lead, share, and then they lead type of thing. So I think that's really critical too in organizations, is to think about, it's not just this like you're leading from out here and this is what you need to do, and they've never really done it before. I think you lose a lot of credibility with staff.
That's fair. I want to pause for just a second, because I know we got some people that are hanging on to ask questions. Now is your time to jump in that Q&A and start throwing your questions for Jayme or myself in that Q&A button. And I've got a couple more questions, and so if we don't get a ton, I've got a few more for you. I could just keep picking your brain, but we're going to try and bring this to a close in about 9 minutes here.
Awesome.
It seems like from what I'm hearing from you, or what I've learned from you today, is it starts with a hiring process. Like the trick, or the key to success. And if I keep looking this way, it's because I get two-year-old twin boys that might just burst through the door at any point in time, and I feel like I can hear the door almost opening. But it's like that scene in Jurassic Park where the raptors are scratching on the door, and you're not sure if they're going to figure out how to open.
I hear them. It's getting louder.
They can hear me talking, and so they just got home from the park, and so once they hear me, they're like, all right, I know Dad's on the other side. They don't quite understand Dad's working. But if I come back to like the way that I'm thinking about hiring and running a remote sales team, it starts with who you hire. And making sure that you're being intentional. And I really like the other Jayme's DNA Pro, and then also getting everybody involved in the hiring process. The onboarding process sounds like you're very specific of here are the outcomes that you need to hit in those first 4 weeks, and then you've got a bit of a buddy system to make sure that that person is sort of checking in and doing that on Zoom every day. So even though it's even though you're remote and you're at home, you're not seeing everybody, at least you're having that first contact with this sort of onboarding Sherpa on at
Yeah, I
least
like that. That's
a
good.
daily,
Yeah, your tail gunner, your guide. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
on
I'll
a
use
daily
that
basis.
language.
And then the last piece just sounds like to sort of sustain the company, it's about that transparency into everything, whether it is the sort of emails that are going out to prospects and to customers, and then the call recordings, and then I guess it's the combination of the transparency and the real-time coaching.
Mm-hmm.
What have I missed, or is that does that kind of sum it up, or are there other pieces that we're kind of
No, I
missing
think
here?
that's a great recap. Absolutely great recap. Yeah.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a question here from Nick. What are some crucial movements that salespeople can make in their career in order to leverage their experience and transition it into sales leadership?
Oh, that's a great one, Nick. Thank you. So I'll just talk a little bit about my own experiences, both from my own career and then helping sponsor and mentor people through their careers, if you will, successfully. So I'm 25 years old. I have a finance degree. I have Xerox behind me. My ski career is behind me. It's new world. And I jump into this company, this rocket ship called Crystal Decisions. I had no idea what Crystal Decisions was. I feel like I'm very privileged and lucky to be in that company. And part of the reason, I think, one of the major reasons that I reflect on now and why I'm at ThoughtExchange is that company, Crystal, had an amazing product, unique value proposition. The customers loved the product. The market opportunity was massive, and the people that were there were pretty phenomenal that were guiding it. So I look at those things when I'm looking at companies first to go to now. I was fortunate to realize that I just kind of fell into it. But now now I have privilege and I have choice. So I'm looking at, when I looked at ThoughtExchange as an example, I'm like, what are the customers saying? How big is the market opportunity? What are the people that are there? How unique is the product and differentiated? And it was like, check, that's my due diligence. It was actually the same due diligence that I offered our venture capital firms. I was like, you got to invest here. I just did all of this due diligence. And so I think I start there because I think I had unfair advantage to actually, so the company was such a great company. It went through recessions. It was able to go through recessions. Similar to what we will be able to do now is we're going to be somewhat recession proof coming out on the other side. Yes, sales are hard, can be harder now, but how our team is showing up and what we ultimately do to help support remote workers and building trust and leadership at scale all digitally is pretty phenomenal. So anyways, that's kind of one, is thinking about the company that you're with and those 5 elements. And then it's your own. It's on you. And so for me, I'm a big, I don't know, I'm super competitive. It's hard not for me to compete at a board game or something else. And I'm thinking about strategy and how to win the game, even with my 6 and 7-year-old or my wife. So I don't know, take this for what it is. I thought about the role and how do I win the role? That's my mindset. I was like, okay, so I'm an account executive. How do I be the best account executive? And then what are the skills I need to get to the next role? So as an example, when I interviewed at Crystal, the sales manager, who's now still a really good friend and mentor, I was like, Andy, I want your job. In the interview, I said this. Probably not the best thing to say in an interview, but he's like, oh yeah, just go do your job really well. I was like, okay. So then, as an example, just quickly go through it, which was like, so how do I become a best account executive or inside sales? I was like, well, I need business development skills. I need deal execution skills. I need understanding of our product. I need understanding of our customers. I need understanding of our buyer. I need a probably pretty good network, and I probably need some leadership skills. There's probably going to be a couple people that are going to have to help me along the way. So I was like, okay, these are the 7 things I need. How good am I at all of these things? Okay, on business development side, I'm pretty good. I had Xerox training. I went 2 weeks training. I had pre-challenger sale, but the same people, customer-centric selling. I had Sandler training. So I invested in myself to oh yeah, I'm good. Oh, I knew nothing about a product. I knew nothing about selling to a CIO. I knew nothing about a competition. Okay, well, those are the things that I can work on to get better. And so I did that. That's the focus on the blueprint. And then I shared my interest with my leader. And I took on things. And one of my favorite advice that I give to all people that I'm coaching and mentoring now is make sure you put yourself in your leader's shoes. So don't just ask for things to do. I think that's great. Hey, I'm ambitious. I would like to do this role. And you have to own your own career. I 100% believe that in my heart of hearts. But you also have to take initiative for it. Say, Jayme, I realize we're growing double the business and we care about 3 major things, which is our net retention to be at 100%, that we're doubling our business, and that we're landing new corporate sales. So based on these 3 initiatives, I started something over here. I'm picking up this. I'm going to go do this thing. Is that cool? Oh my God. Yes. Amazing. Go. How can I support you? So taking on that initiative. So it's this beautiful push-pull with your leader, and owning your career, I think, is really critical, Nick.
I don't have anything else that I can add, but I love that you're starting with do your job like excellently first. Because I think it's really, you see a number of people that are like, oh, I just want the next thing. I don't care as much about this job. And when you're looking at, a variety of candidates, the person that's, 110% in their current role is going to be much, much higher up the food chain than somebody who really, really wants that next role, but is only sort of 80% quota or 50% quota.
I'll be vulnerable in that. I have had a great career, and I have had many mistakes along the way. That's one of the big ones I made multiple times. So it's just like, I'm picking up momentum. I should be the VP. I should have your job. Why don't I have your job? Mm-hmm. And I lost sight of the director job and didn't do the director job the way that I should be actually doing it. And I was so focused in on the job, the future job, without doing the current job. Almost got fired. It was just a bad thing. Like, do your job really, really well and be really self-aware. I'm like, whew, all right, that could have been really bad. And so I think that's a really great point, Colin, which is like really owning your current job and actually being passionate and the job that you're actually in. Those other jobs will come when you actually make and share your path.
Right on. I think we got time for one last question from Christian here. And he's asking about the percentage of time a sales leader should be spending coaching his team versus pursuing key deals and accounts.
Oh, I don't know. I'd like to say coaching always, 100% on coaching. I don't know. Hopefully the leader is not just doing their own deals. What I say I have 2 amazing leaders that I'm working with. I have 4 amazing leaders, and 2 of them in particular, they have some pretty awesome, actually all of them have skills to just roll up their sleeves and do it. And I always challenge them to push back to make sure that, like to what you said earlier, Colin, that you're scaling. So if you are going to lead it, make sure that person is with you, that you're training and coaching so that they can do it, so that we actually truly do scale our business. Because I don't need 4 salespeople. I need 20 or 50. Your ability as a leader is to get scale. Your shift in a leadership capacity is to get work done through others. Yes, you have to go out and do the work yourself too. And I think that's a really powerful thing. But I don't know. I don't have a perfect number. The thing that I love to say is customer centric, 70%, maybe coaching 20%, and I don't know, maybe there's crappy admin that we have to do that's 10% of the time or something like that, keeping Salesforce up and running. But I'd almost argue that that's not necessarily crappy. That's a critical thing. And a lot of really good salespeople do an amazing job of really owning and leveraging their CRM for test tasks and next steps and staying on top. But yeah, great question.
Yeah, great question. Great advice. And I think it's such an easy trap to run into, especially if you're maybe a founder, CEO, or somebody that doesn't necessarily doesn't come from a sales background, to hire that player coach. Say, hey, I want to build up my sales leadership team. I hear from a lot of CEOs, co-founders. They come to me and they say, hey, I'm trying to build up my first team. Do I hire a super AE? Do I hire a VP of sales, a director of sales? What are your thoughts on just to kind of build on Christian's question? And then I promise we'll wrap this up.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the player coach role, where they're leading people, but they are also taking deals themselves and owning deals?
We do it. We 100% embrace it here. I think the challenge is actually, as we're I'm trying to always build leadership capacity, knowing that we're on this high growth trajectory. So I think player coach is a beautiful way to actually build capacity in your organization. So I have a client success manager who is running a team of 4. Last year, I think their team is going to be about close to 8. And so I'll be like, all right, you should just be more lead, not so much player coach. But if you got a team of 3, 4, this is a perfect opportunity for you to build capacity, hire a team-ish lead or player coach. And, for those that are on the phone, that are on Zoom, that have companies similar to us, you're always balancing this, like, having a full-fledged leader over a team of 4 that's only leading is probably like not the best thing to do for the business.
Yeah.
But having a kind of a player coach 4, probably pretty good. Maybe if you got the team is then 6 or 8, they can start to shift to, more full-fledged leader. And again, I think I say full-fledged leader in the point of like, they're going through those 5 or 6 different types of strategies.
And you're spending 100% of your day coaching and leading as opposed to just taking deals.
Doing deals. Yeah.
Perfect.
100%. Yeah.
Jayme, I appreciate you going over time with us. This was phenomenal. I learned a ton. I got a bunch of notes myself.
Cool.
So thank you so much for coming on the show and doing this live with us. I really appreciate it. If people are wanting to get in touch with you, ask you questions, or to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, just go into LinkedIn here. I'll just put it in the chat if it's there. Feel free to jump into my LinkedIn profile.
Perfect.
And
so you're Jayme with a Y, Smithers at ThoughtExchange. And if you are listening and you're on the podcast, I'll throw a link to it in the show notes here, so you can check that out.
Yeah, fantastic.
Right on.
Wonderful to meet you all. Be safe. Sending good thoughts around the world, and thanks, Colin, for bringing us all together today. It's really awesome.
Of course. Thanks for joining us, Jayme.
Yep.
Thanks everybody for joining.
Bye-bye now.
See ya.